speak in public participation.
Yes, thank you, Councilman. This is Tom Bradford. You all know me quite well, and thanks for the opportunity. Mayor Tecklenburg, members of City Council, members of city staff, and my fellow Charlestonians, we have been working on this project for over 10 years. We've come a long, long way to the point that we are now on the verge of shovel ready. We have drafted the Lowline Phase 1 development agreement to govern allocation of funds for construction. Our next step will be to work with the City of Charleston's attorneys to refine the agreement. We've collaborated with city staff on its equitable Lowline document, which will provide for an abundance of accountability, which we passionately support. Let me be clear, this is not about giving money to the Friends of the Lowline, as some have said. This is about using the Friends in a structured partnership to achieve something wonderful for the city, something that builds resiliency in stormwater handling, and improved mobility, healthy recreation, and social enrichment, all of which can strongly support affordable housing and help build equitable opportunity. With the very promising prospect of federal and private sector help, every dollar the city puts in now could leverage another $5, perhaps even $7. Timing this start, putting shovels in the ground sooner rather than later, is, in my opinion, critical. You've heard it before, but it bears repeating. Charleston has some bouncing back to do, bouncing back from the pandemic, on racial equity, and on economic opportunity. The time to begin now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bradford, for that. And we can move right along to the approval of the minutes. The minutes have been deferred, so we can move on from that. Then we go into new business.
I'm sorry, I do have something to say as well. I'm sorry, Councilman Mitchell.
Oh, okay, because we're moving on. All
Oh,
right.
sorry.
All right.
I'll be really quick.
Okay,
So my name is Megan Mills. Good afternoon, City Council and Mayor Tecklenburg. Public outreach for the Lowline project is critical. I know you all have heard from me about the extensive amount of outreach we have already done to date. We are very proud of the work we have done in the past year and are proud of the partnerships we have established. We have created relationships with multiple organizations and community leaders, and I'm happy to share that list with anyone. But we also acknowledge and take in that there's a large segment of the community that hasn't had a voice yet. We are listening. Going forward, once the true design portion begins, we will do everything to ensure that the people who haven't had a voice in this will have one. We will not only take their feedback, but incorporate it into the project and in the programming. Because of that, we are confident that everyone will take ownership of the park and feel welcome and included. We appreciate the partnership we already have created with the City of Charleston and look forward to growing that and defining it as we move forward. The Charleston community is ready for a park. So we fully support tonight the presentation for the equitable Lowline document that's been created by city staff, and we appreciate their hard work. We're looking forward to hearing from the discussion here tonight. Thanks so much. Thanks for letting me do that.
All right, thank you, Megan. Sorry about that. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, can I just raise a question?
Yes, you may.
To the Lowline. You know, I did receive your email with the pie chart. And one part of the pie specifically talks about stormwater. And if you can, okay, since stormwater is quote unquote lodged within our stormwater department, how will that work? How will that be coordinated? Who will be responsible for it? Will it be in our capital projects? Will it be a part of our stormwater agenda? Have you gotten to a point to figure out how that will work? Because I think that concern was raised at one of our last meetings.
I think that maybe Megan and I both can share a little bit. First of all, we have a meeting with Matt Fountain next week. We are really aware of the intersection between our efforts and the city's efforts, and we realize that when we really get engineering underway, we've got a lot of coordinating to do with stormwater. So Megan, if you have anything to add.
No, yeah, as we continue, I mean, you know, we just plan to work in tandem with Matt Fountain and his team to make sure that we're coordinating each, you know, as we progress. So yeah, everything Tom said.
Thanks. I just wanted that to be a part of the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on down to our new businesses now, and we'll have requests from the approval for 2021-22 Community Development Block Grant, and I'm gonna call Ms. Gianna Johnson and to share us with that. We have already approved it, looked at it. So Ms. Johnson would go back over it. I don't think we have to go through the whole list. I think everyone have received a copy of the list of the changes. So maybe we can expedite that a little. Ms. Johnson?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilmember Mitchell and members of the committee. I want to start by sharing with you the change in funding amounts that we've seen. So from the prior year, this budget that is before you now will be for the 2021-2022 program year that effectively begins June 1 of this year. We saw a decrease in CDBG of $32,721. We saw an increase in our home allocation of $9,540. And then we saw an increase in our HOTWA, which is Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, of $100,342. So just so you're fully aware that we did see some increases, but we also saw some declines or decreases in our allocation. And the Community Development Advisory Committee met several weeks ago to review this budget along with staff. And what you see before you today is that budget, along with, of course, those requests that come from our nonprofit partners who help us to achieve the goals as outlined in our consolidated plan. And so I would ask your approval of the budget for both Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, Home Investment Partnership Program funding, and Community Development Block Grant funding is presented to you in your packet.
Good. May I have a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Move for approval. I'll second.
Okay, it was moving second. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Okay, we'll move on down to number 2, which is the draft plan for action for equity in the low line, in the low country low line. I think that's Chip.
Councilmember Mitchell, that is actually Matt Ojala
Matt,
from
okay.
my team. So
right.
Matt, if you'll speak to that, please.
Sure. I'm just going to share my screen real quick here. All right, so thank you, everyone. And so this update tonight is for your information and input, is an opportunity for us to share staff's current thinking around the issues of gentrification and displacement and equity around the future low country low line. So while we're all excited about the benefits of the low line, we also understand the challenges that bringing forward a significant public improvement can have on its surrounding communities. We've seen it play out at the High Line in New York City, at the Belt Line in Atlanta, and our goal is to prevent, as much as we can, a recurrence of that at the low line. The low line should be a park for the people, and we also need to work to ensure that its neighbors can live and thrive in their communities nearby. So the document shared with you is a working document of strategies. We recognize that it can and should be improved to capture additional ideas and strategies. And we recognize that it can and should be improved to provide more specificity and definition. So we're interested in capturing broader input to make this stronger, including here today and into the future. I also just want to commend the Housing and Mobility Subcommittee of the Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation for their focus on these issues specific to the low line. They understand both the opportunity and the threat that a project like this can entail for its neighbors. So we're excited to continue to engage with them and to bring forward any additional ideas they have in this process. But we're at a stage now where there's an ask for the city to contribute funding to the low line so it can proceed into design and construction. And the time for discussion and action around issues of equity, gentrification, and displacement should be occurring before a project commences. So within this document, there are 20 different strategies around the areas of community building and outreach, policy and zoning, and development and preservation. And these are strategies that have been discussed amongst a number of city departments and with the Friends of the Lowline. And many of these strategies are ones that we're already taking some initial steps on, and others are ones that need further exploration and discussion. So as we go through this document, I encourage my colleagues who have worked on this to jump in and provide any additional context or answer any questions. So really quickly, I just want to share a few stats regarding housing around the lowline. As the document shares, within a quarter mile of the lowline, there are roughly 6,400 residential dwellings. And of those, almost 1,000 of them are affordable homes. That includes 429 of those being Charleston Housing Authority units. There are also approximately 300 units of additional affordable housing that are planned for this area within a quarter mile of the low line. So moving on into the strategy section, and we can start with the area of community building and outreach. The first item is around increasing racial, gender, and age diversity on the board of the Friends. As the entity entrusted by the city to partner in shaping the future of the lowline, it's critical that a diversity of voices are at the table and making decisions within their leadership. So there's a need to increase racial, gender, and age diversity on the Friends board. And they're taking steps in that direction, having brought on a consultant to work solely on this issue. We're also recommending representation for young people with a seat designated for a person under the age of 35, and for the community with seat or seats for representatives of the surrounding neighborhood councils. Sorry, 1 second. And so while community involvement on the board of directors is critical, an engaged community advisory council should also be helping to ensure that community needs and input are at the forefront of each stage of the low line.
Hey, Matt, can you make it just a little larger for the elderly folks?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Is this good?
Great. Yes. Cool.
All right, and please, if anyone has questions as we go or comments, please jump in. So an engaged community advisory council should help to ensure community needs and input are at the forefront at each stage of the low line. The Friends have begun the process of forming a community advisory council, and the city should be working with the Friends in this effort to make sure that it's inclusive.
Matt?
Yes.
In terms of forming that advisory council, is that going to be like our boards of commissions? Will the city council members actually mayor appoint and will confirm, or is it going to be off our reservation?
Well, I think that's something that needs to be discussed. So I know that the Friends have taken some initial steps towards trying to get a group of people together. We need to determine, what that representation is like. If that's an entity based out of the Friends or based out of the city. I think that's something we haven't determined yet. A good question. So taking the next two items together, and this is really important. The design of the future low line must be informed and guided by the voices of the people who are going to use the park, and especially the Black community who have been underrepresented in responses to date in community engagement efforts. So the Friends are hiring community engagement consultants now, focused on making engagement more equitable, but the city needs to be sure that that's going to happen. And so we also recommend that they present to the city a comprehensive community engagement plan to show who, when, where, and how the community is going to be engaged, and to ensure that their input is going to inform the design and the future of the low line. We also want to see that the community surrounding the low line, and especially minority and women-owned businesses, are able to benefit economically from the low line. So we recommend some further exploration of programs that have been implemented in other parts of the country that could look at requiring local hiring on major capital projects and expanding opportunities for historically underutilized small businesses. And also, we want to look at identifying an enhanced MBE, WBE threshold for the low line project. And just rounding out this section, working towards what we can do to increase access to healthcare, to healthy food, recreation opportunities in the communities around the low line, and also enhancing education around housing in this community. So moving on to the next area of policy and zoning, Council is currently looking at updating its mixed-use workforce housing ordinance that would encourage the creation of affordable homes in the sites that are being rezoned. And quickly, can you see this new screen?
Yes.
I just share this map posted on the Post and Courier that shows the locations of the developments that previously rezoned to MU that maximized their site density and opted out of building any affordable units. And this is essentially the route of the low line. So I just wanted to share that that policy change could have implications for housing in this area. Next item is that the city has been advocating for enabling legislation at the state level that would give jurisdictions the option of enacting a mandatory inclusionary zoning policy. This has had challenges in garnering sufficient support at the legislature, but it's an item we continue to work on. The next item has been discussed at previous council meetings and at CD committee. So I won't go into detail here, but we understand the need to utilize an equity lens for future Cooper River Bridge TIF allocations. We also want to explore utilizing a state put fund. There's a lot of detail around the parameters of what this could look like, but a state put fund would basically compensate nearby property owners for increases in their property taxes resulting from reassessment. This is an idea that came out of a previous state put fund that was up at Magnolia. And just rounding out this section, we want to prioritize equity in the Upper Peninsula Mobility Fund. We want to promote safe mobility throughout the community and looking at supporting appropriate infrastructure for pedestrians and cyclists, not just at the low line, but in the areas around it so that we're making those appropriate connections. And then lastly, we've begun to look at real estate transfer fees that could support affordable housing. However, this would require state legislation. And then last section, development and preservation. So we've discussed the low-line housing site at the last CD meeting. As you know, we've selected a developer to build 55 units of affordable rental housing on the site. And so we're excited about partnering with them and recognize that this is an important piece to the puzzle in terms of delivering additional affordable units near the low line. The city also has home rehabilitation programs that we offer. We're working to go back out to the communities around the low line to ensure that they know about the opportunities to participate in those programs. Housing staff has been monitoring the area surrounding the low line for additional acquisition for affordable housing development. And as you all know, this area is really throughout the peninsula has become more and more pricey. So there's challenges for us in acquiring properties, but it's something that we continue to monitor. And rounding out this section, the city will continue to advocate for increased density on rental assistance demonstration sites, explore opportunity funds as a vehicle to support additional affordable housing, We've engaged with an opportunity fund, had some discussions with them about potential investments, specifically for affordable housing on the peninsula, and those are ongoing. And then lastly, identifying city-owned sites for affordable housing development. So if we have properties that can meet this need, we should be looking at those. And
Matt, this is Keith.
One question. Any questions first?
So that wraps up the overview of the document, and ran through this quickly. So we're happy to answer questions.
Okay, Councilman Waring.
Thank you. Yeah, you did a good job running through it quickly, Matt. Let me ask a question about the Coca-Cola plant. What's the boundaries on the TIF district?
It's
that the low line runs through.
I don't know if someone has access to a map. It's a little wonky.
Okay. Well, let me tell you what I'm thinking. I know we have the objective anyway. I think the mayor's on the line. We're trying to find an alternative spot for maybe our recreation department. The Coca-Cola plant. And I'm just wondering if an alternative site were found. This is something maybe we need to look into the legality. That alternative site probably will not be within that TIF district. So I'm wondering if somehow monies for affordable housing could be used as a property swap, where the folks at the Coca-Cola plant, they can acquire another site, and this property hopefully is close or very close to the TIF district, I hope, or some TIF district. In exchange for the alternative site, then this site becomes, all affordable housing with affordable, where the Coca-Cola bottling plant is. The two situations like that, I think potentially that can create an enormous amount of affordable housing, permanent affordable housing, if we can find alternative sites. So the part about, for example, Mr. Mayor, I've mentioned it to you before, but SCE&G has a substation off of Savage Road and Ashleytown Landon Drive, right across the street from Tecklenburg Boulevard. They're building a new facility off of Tecklenburg Boulevard. And I've already talked to Danny Cassis about potentially the old site, the city acquiring. Right behind that old site is an 11-acre tract. Part of it's wet, but 11-acre tract that the city already owns. If we combine that with the SC&G site, it may be very well be large enough for our people over at the Coca-Cola plant to move operations over there, and then that Coca-Cola site become affordable housing, which would be, and man, you can hop and skip and get to the low line from there. That's one. Because you're right, Matt, the property is very expensive and it's not getting any cheaper. The second one is, Councilman Mitchell, in your district, right off of, I think it's Grace Street, where the townhouses, right now it's being used for parking. The gentleman with the old cigar factory, I forget his name, but Coswell, I believe it's Coswell. Very good out of the box thing. I had a conversation with him. And obviously he needs the lease on that parking, he'd like to extend it. And I asked him, I said, if you can think about some property that's close to the low line that maybe they could buy, that we could use for affordable housing, and then we can do a swap with the Grace Drive where townhomes were supposed to go. Obviously that property was part of the mitigation agreement, and affordable housing fits right in there. But if they can find another tract of land for affordable housing in close proximity to the low line, then maybe it would be something that the city would be worth looking at to exchange that parking on Grace Street for maybe an alternative site they can buy that can be utilized for affordable housing. So those two potential exchanges are out there. And I wanted to know, and this, we can't get an answer on this now, but if monies can be used from the TIF account to buy an alternative site that would gauge into a swap. So I throw those two examples out for affordable housing around the low line.
Councilman Waring, I think we have to be I think the mayor and probably have to get his staff to take a look at that.
Oh, yeah, I want to
And
throw that
see-
out. I'm not to get an answer today, but you know.
Yeah, that's feasible, because even with the Cooper River Bridge site, you know, it's under that mitigation, and under the mitigation states what we can use it for and what we can't use it for.
That's right.
That would have to be onto legal things too, also to check,
Correct.
make sure that that can be done, you know.
Affordable housing is eligible though.
Yeah, I mean, if you swap in the land and it's not going to be there on the affordable housing piece where the parking is anymore, then you're going to have to look at it differently.
I agree.
You see, that's what I'm alluding to. Okay.
If you don't ask, you don't have a chance.
The mayor and Councilmember Jackson have their hands
They
up.
have their hands up.
Oh, I didn't see that. Who was first?
I think Councilmember Jackson was.
The mayor? Who? I don't know. I can't see him.
You can do the wrap up, Mayor. Thank you, Chairman. And I love watching Councilmember Waring's wheels turning in his head. It's like, which makes me think that maybe we should use this opportunity as a bigger committee to form a little sub-task group, a wheeling and dealing task group that can rally around Mr. Arjala's wonderful report and especially focus on the real estate section of it. So that I would volunteer. I think that would be a really, fun opportunity for us to think outside the box on behalf of the Cooper River Bridge TIF area in general, and especially how we're going to jumpstart the low line to be the epitome of housing affordability that we've all been talking about forever. And I just want to say thank you to Matt and whoever else has put this comprehensive plan together. It smacks of collegiality, collaboration, public-private partnerships. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions, and sort of the tapestry still is coming together in big chunks of threads that need to be woven in. But I do feel like we have a sense of a framework. As the Lowline Friends have been telling us all along, this is not their project. This is truly, the poster child of a robust public-private partnership with investors that we don't even know exist yet, and the players that have been pouring themselves out, like the Friends and several of their supporters have done for a long time. So I'm very excited to see that the city has contributed our thinking and our, understanding of topics that might not be that familiar to our private partners. It seems like a whole new corner is being turned. So I just really wanted to thank everybody for that.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
So I know you said it could wait, but just so happens I have my little TIF district folder sitting on my desk. This is the district of the Cooper River Bridge district, and it basically runs up the central spine of it being Meeting Street, and touches a bit of Lime Street and runs up to Conroy Street, which is just above where the Meeting Street Academy is. So that's as far north as it goes. The Magnolia TIF district is this one, and the Coca-Cola building that we own is just across the street from where the TIF district is. It's not in it, it's right across the street. So, and I think that's okay, particularly Councilmember Waring, an awesome idea for that eventually to be affordable housing. Number one, it's not in the TIF district, so if we build affordable housing there, we're not missing out on the big, bonus of the extra property tax. We can keep it on the city, ownership if we like. And the transit stop for LCRT will be right across the street. So it's much more suited for affordable housing than it is for a warehouse for our maintenance and parks department. With all due respect to Mr. Kronsberg and everyone, it really makes a lot more sense long-term, just what you recommended, Councilmember Waring. I just want to go ahead and say, I think that's an awesome idea.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would, we'll take a look at that, and I think you can be working on that and see what can come out of that procedure anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
But, Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Gregory?
Yeah, I mean, while we're talking affordable housing, and this may not relate directly to the low line in terms of finding alternative sites for construction of affordable housing, I don't know who owns College Park, but College Park would be an unbelievable site for us to create a mixed income, affordable housing community right by the park. I'm not sure who owns it.
I'm pretty sure the Citadel does.
I thought the Citadel owns it. Well, maybe we can talk to the Citadel, but I think it's not used. It's very rarely used. It is used for baseball practice now and then. Right. But it's an unbelievable site right in the middle of the city, okay, that we can be very I think John Song can be very creative with. John Song is Gianna.
Yeah.
Well, I know.
Just to throw it out there, if we're going to have this little subcommittee to start talking about alternative sites for creating affordable housing, well, I know we're talking low line. I just think that we can expand the focus. I mean, Keith and Mitchell and
you put your name in there, right?
We've talked about that many times as we sit at Moe's. And I just think that it's now time for us to sort of look into that matter and see whether or not we can get that site. It's an unbelievable piece of property to get.
It's not being used. It's
underutilized.
I think at one time, I think the city had, and I think something happened that they gave it over to the Citadel or something.
I thought we owned it at one point.
Yeah, we had owned it at one time. I think for some reason, it's something between the Citadel and the city. They would have to go back, the mayor would have to go back and check to really see how that was taking place during that time, because I really don't know. But I know
Waring knows. He had his hand up.
Yeah, the city had owned it at one time. I know. Councilman Waring?
He has his hand up as well.
Yep, Waring, who?
Mr. Chairman, I think Matt Froelich and Chip McQueenie had their hands up as well after Councilmember Waring.
Well, no. Let's hear from them first. But I believe
let's hear from them.
But anyway,
let's hear from them first. Either one.
I was going to volunteer Matt Froelich to answer that question.
Okay, Matt.
So the city owned College Park, but we deeded it over to the Citadel as a part of the larger land transfer agreement that happened multiple years ago that includes the River Dogs and the Haygood parking lot and all of that property. But I mean, the city ultimately, if the Citadel ever gave the property up, it would come back to the city is essentially what it boils down to, but they have ownership rights on it right now.
That's what it was. I know it was something.
So there's a reverter clause?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is.
You can play baseball on the lawn, no problem.
No, let me tell you some good news on that. There has been some talk already with, and I've mentioned it as a result of what Councilman Gregory and Mitchell, Mitchell didn't allude to it, but we used to anyway, go to Moe's sometimes after city council meeting. You're right, we would talk about affordable housing there. So I pitched the idea to a couple of prominent Citadel alumni who have touched base with the new president anyway, on a swap basically. They have some housing on the Citadel that's occupying very valuable land because the Citadel can't grow anymore. You got the river and because you got the neighborhood. So hypothetically, if mixed use affordable housing came at College Park, they would give up the right, to use it as a baseball field. They would get interior portions of their campus back for new construction. So So I think the time is right, Mr. Mayor, to put together that same kind of committee that I commend you, Councilor Jackson. Good idea, think out of the box. But that subject is already being broached with a couple of prominent Citadel alumni. So if we were, Mr. Mayor, put together our ad hoc committee, whatever, to engage in that conversation to get that back for mixed use affordable housing. Now, of course, some of the housing from the Citadel would need to come over there as well. But if they can, if you know, right behind where they're building a new business school, some of those houses, they'd love to get rid of those houses and put some academic future space there as well. So
What's keeping them from doing that?
well, right now they got professors living in some of those places, you know, in some of those houses. They have some professors living in those houses.
Yeah.
Where they're building the I think it's the Baker School of Business, or Tommy Baker's building that
Yeah.
business school. You know, they have those houses back there where professors live on campus. Well,
as well as employees.
Well,
That'd be great.
Right.
What do they need from us? What do they need from the city to be able to do that?
Well, right now they can't use the College Park to put housing there because then it have to come back to the city.
I see.
It's supposed to be used for a baseball field, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
if we can work out, you know, something there, I mean, maybe we can go up. How many stories in that district can we go up there? I don't know, 4 stories maybe?
Yeah.
We should be able to satisfy a housing component for them as well as some affordability for the city. But again, it opens up underutilized land, valuable land for the Citadel, and then gets what is a blight, quite frankly, because the Citadel never going to make that thing look too. It's always going to look kind of rough over there.
Blighted, yeah.
Right. So we, you know, kill
Worth
two.
exploring. I'll say that.
Say what?
It's worth exploring. That's
I agree, definitely. And so I agree. And that idea that Councilor Jackson had about putting together a little out of the box thinking, I'm for that always.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes.
I would just ask members of CD Committee of City Council, to Matt's earlier request, to please review the draft plan that we put out before you today. As he indicated, a number of our staff from planning, from our design center, we all work together with Friends of the Lowline and members from the racial conciliation subcommittees. And so we would certainly appreciate your insights and any additions, amendments to the plan so that we can have a more formal working document and literally ask at some point for your vote and approval of it as a working document that we can move forward on and begin implementation of.
So today is just for information only?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Because we want to give you an opportunity to provide any additional insights you want, unless you deem otherwise.
Good enough. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask a question of Ms. Johnson or Matt, if I could.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Yeah, you good.
Thanks. I'm looking to be recognized. Okay,
I'm looking at my sheet now.
All right, thanks. Who owns the low line?
Oh.
I'm thinking it's the city, but if I'm
City.
wrong. Okay, the city owns it.
Yes.
All right. Let me tell you one reason when we had that discussion at not last meeting, but maybe it was the city council meeting before that, while I waged in, when I heard the piece about drainage, $7 million worth of drainage for the low line or something like of that effect. This city has more experience doing drainage than anybody, I think, in the state of South Carolina, or any municipality in the state of South Carolina, given the projects that we've done. Who is going to oversee the construction of the low line? And the reason I'm saying that,
Councilman Waring,
right?
Prior to your coming on, we did have a discussion with regard to drainage,
Right.
and the need for coordination with Matt and everyone. So we did have a discussion on that earlier, and the low line folks, Meg and Bradford, clearly said that they realized that it's something that the city would have to be intricately involved in.
Okay, great. Okay. So when it comes to the actual improvements to the low line itself. I see it as a capital project with the city, public-private, very much like the Gilliard, very much like International African American Museum. But our capital projects people oversaw both of those projects, and obviously was involved with the bidding. Does this draft bring any clarity to that when it comes to making the improvements along the low line? Is it going to be our capital projects department handling the bids, or is it going to be Friends of the Low Line handling the bids? That's the kind of transparency that I hope we can address to this draft process. So when it comes to council, those questions would be vetted out and answered.
If I'm not mistaken, Mayor, and correct me if I'm wrong, there is an agreement being drafted that is going to go to our legal department.
Yeah, Tom referenced that at the beginning of the meeting as well.
Right.
And we have an existing MOU with them that got us this far. And right now, I think Chip on our legal team and what's the attorney's name? Andy.
Gowder or whatever.
Andy Gowder are working on a new version of that agreement between us that would outline who does what the city's oversight would be, what the role of the low line would be, accountability and all like that. So they're working. Chip, what do you think? We're a few weeks away from being able to bring that forward.
I have not. I'll check my email. I don't think I've gotten anything from Andy on that yet. I didn't know that was something.
Yep. It's on the way.
I don't see anything from Andy yet.
It's on the way, I think.
Well, that's the kind of information I like before we get to the point of voting on this, because that kind of transparency, obviously we putting taxpayers' dollars in this. We need to be able to have that. So what you're talking about, Mr. Mayor, sounds good, but hopefully if we got that and have clear understandings on that, I'll be ready to vote on it.
Yeah, it's not going to, we're not going to hold a vote on it tonight.
No, I know it's information today, but it sounds like
Yes,
more
come to
information is
council.
on the way.
Yeah, we're heading in the right direction. Mr. Chairman, do you mind if I just ask Tom when he thinks Andy will have a draft of that for us?
That's fine. Tom, Mr. Bradford?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I've actually read the draft already.
Oh, good.
And it's complicated and exhaustive, and it's headed for Chip pretty soon.
Okay, good.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm also complicated and exhaustive, so
We got
which was a good fit.
Everybody's exhausted.
a match made in heaven there.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? We can move on along to, okay, we have number 3 and 4. We can take those together. Both of those are on consider resolution certifying the property located at 221 St. Philip Street and 223 St. Philip Street. And we can take both of those together if the committee so see it. It's a memorandum of draft resolution attached to it. You know, you can see it.
Yes, and I prepared the memorandum. I didn't see them attached to the version posted online. So did you all receive?
Yes.
The resolution? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
But it just requests us. So they're asking for income tax credits from DOR, and we've done this before with this committee. But there's a process through which the city council adopts a resolution basically certifying that they qualify as abandoned building sites. And therefore, that portion of the test for income tax credits is satisfied. And what I typically do is require them to submit an affidavit showing that it's abandoned by under the legal definition, which is more than 66. At least 66% of it has been unavailable for income producing purposes and vacant for the last 5 years. And that's what happened in this case. The gentleman who submitted it, I think, lived around the corner and said neither property has been used for income producing purposes over the last 5 years and submitted this request. So no money comes from city funds. It would all be a tax credit, income tax credit.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Move for approval.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moving second. All vote by saying aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. And only we have one more under old business. And I think this is going to be taken up by city council. So I don't know if we really have to do a big discussion on that. Cooper River Bridge redevelopment area tip increment finance allocation. So that's going to be.
Councilmember Mitchell, you are correct. I put that on the agenda because it was my understanding that we were going to cover it again under CD, but there is a meeting proposed for the 25th of this month to have a more exhaustive discussion with regard to the TIF allocations. And what we did want to mention tonight, however, since it is under old business, there is one other project that we would want to include and want your consideration of when you come to that discussion. It is a minority and women business zone incubator that would possibly be located in the James Lewis Jr. Ground floor, the ground floor of that building. And so several team members are on the call who've been working with the mayor, working with our finance team to discuss this matter. And so I'm going to ask Ruth just to provide a brief overview of the project to the city committee so that you can be aware of that process and what the thought process is behind that as you make those considerations later in the month.
All righty. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you, Gianna. Good evening to the mayor and of course, Chairman Mitchell and all our council members. We're excited about the possibility of establishing for the first time a dedicated business incubator for women and minority businesses. We understand that over at the James Lewis's building, that this was an area that was located with African-American businesses and housing, and they were displaced as a result of the bridge. And so creating a business opportunity and an incubator to establish businesses back on Peninsula. This particular incubator is approximately 7,600 square feet. The developer has offered it to the city for free or for $1. And so we are excited about this opportunity of establishing this business incubator. This business incubator, where our vision is to house a commercial kitchen, which the kitchen can host 1 to 2 restaurants with no bar space, but limited seating. It will also have office space similar to the lumberyard, similar to other incubator space, co-working space, conference rooms, private offices. Also an opportunity for retail space, approximately 200 to 300 square feet retail space, where we're looking at possibly putting in 4 to 5 retail spaces. Those, again, that will be there with African-American businesses and minority women-owned businesses. You hear time and time again that on the Peninsula, where are our minority-owned businesses? It will also house some common space, such as front desk, a welcoming lobby, office supply data center, a shared mini kitchen, and several bathrooms. And so this is a great opportunity to, again, to provide access and opportunity to create business space here on the Peninsula dedicated to African-American and women-owned businesses. The developer, as I said earlier, Plastic and Flat Iron is prepared and they're putting together the legal documents with the intent to give that property to the city. However, they're delivering that currently in a dark shell space. However, we're hoping that they can provide that to a warm shell, but we do need to have funding for the design because they have to have the design built out before moving on. And as you know, the James Lewis Housing Complex is about to break ground in the next couple of months. And I do believe that they found some money. Amy's on the phone to talk about where we can possibly get some money for design. And I'll stop there.
Thank you much.
Hey, Ruth, I mean, Mr. Chairman, I really think we have to take our hats off to Ms. Jordan, who negotiated this, because the city went in thinking that we would have to pay for that space, but it was Ms. Jordan who said, why should we have to pay anything? And as a result of that, and I don't know what she did, they came back and said, okay. So I really think we need to take our hats off to Ms. Jordan and the work that she has done in that regard.
Well, I can't take all the credit because Gianna, I will tell you, John Song, she's been doing a fabulous job with this project. I will tell you, it's Gianna who is working in the back, and then me begging, and the mayor putting the final icing on the cake.
Amen.
So it was the good cop, bad cop.
And it would be a good feeder to businesses of the low line. We need to make sure that there's that kind of nexus as businesses are created, that we have people prepped to take on some of those concessions.
Thank you much.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may add just a couple of
yes, Mr. Mayor.
Points to this, and Ruth and Gianna, Meg, they've really done a nice job pulling this together. Just a little background in real estate, y'all have heard those terms, either dark cold space or warm vanilla. In either case, we've got to pay for the improvements. And the other issue is that, particularly since we're looking at doing some restaurant space, and it'll be on the ground floor of this building that they've already designed and have a building permit, we need to go ahead in very short order to go ahead and get an architect and figure out where the pipes are going to come up and all through like that. So when they pour the slab, they go ahead and put our conduits and everything in place. We can come back later next year and build it on out, but it's real important to go ahead and get the design done so that we can, be ready for when they plan and pour that foundation. So we talked about this morning, and it isn't a TIF district, but Amy believes we have some reserve funds from 2018 or 2019 that we could do the design portion. Then we'll come back later next year and figure out whether we'll use TIF funds or not for the build out, because we need to kind of move pretty quickly on getting the design done. So that's kind of, and one other thing I wanted to mention, we do think that according to the developer that just given where they are and their lending and all that, it will be easier for them to give us $1 a year lease for 60 years or 99 years. After 60 years, the building comes back to the city anyway. So it's going to be ours at the end of the day anyhow. So whatever works out best legally, I think either option is okay. But anyway, I just thought I would share that to fill out a few facts about it.
Oh, thank you on that. So do we need to make any motion on this, or just for information?
Just for information.
I think it's for information. We could go ahead with y'all's blessing if no one objects, and go ahead and try to get a design contract with the architect, and we'll just bring it to Ways and Means.
Okay.
I so move, Mr. Chairman.
Well, second.
So Councilmember Mitchell, Councilmember Saccharin, and Councilwoman Jackson's hands have been up. So.
Okay, Councilwoman Jackson, then I'll go to Councilman.
Wait a minute, I put a motion on the floor now.
Yes,
I'll second it.
All in favor of the vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Then we open up for questions.
I just, I want to definitely thank the tag of good cop women, bad cop women, however you need to do your job, just keep doing it. I know many of us have sat in on the variety of the Commission on Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation subcommittees, but the Economic Empowerment Committee has especially, I mean, Ruth has been a faithful staff representative to that committee, along with Meg Thompson, Christina Oth, and I think, you know, they've known that this has been in the works. I don't know if they know the details about the developer dedicating the space now, but over and over again, their question comes, well, who's going to own it? Who's going to run it? Is it going to be a Black-owned enterprise? And I don't know if it's, you know, we don't really need to decide that right this minute, but I do feel like we need to be clear that even though the city's gonna, you know, own the property or however we're gonna do it and be responsible for building it out, I'm sure we're gonna have to, you know, get some partners in on that. But this needs to be a venture that we can say represents the best of the thinking from our commission. And I hope we can start the, you know, juices churning on what that will look like.
Saccharin.
Councilman Saccharin?
Thank you, Chair. And Councilwoman Jackson, that dovetails exactly to what the question and the point I was going to make. So, Ruth, this is very encouraging. And I know I checked in with you all a couple of weeks back to get an update on it because I've heard some rumblings and it sounds like we're heading in the right direction. And I love the concept. And I do think folks on our commission should be looped in, particularly Alvin Johnson, because he has some strong thoughts and opinions on it. I'm not sure if y'all connected with him yet.
Yes, sir, we have.
Okay. The other piece of this is we will have an opportunity at the next CD committee meeting to learn more of the specifics, because I do have some ideas around leveraging some outside private funds to help pay for that build out. If you looked at a private company, Black-owned private company, and did an RFP, you know, there's money to be made on the restaurant side. So they would come to the table to help pay for the build out and maybe do some sort of cost sharing as well as some revenue sharing for that particular company. The other question I had was around parking. Is there enough parking there to really support a restaurant concept?
So, and I'm glad you asked that, council member. And so a restaurant, and again, it's still up in the air with developers because based on how the building and the land currently sits and is addressed, we may or may not be able to do the restaurant. However, if we are able to make it happen, it was going to be similar to a go, like order and take out, and then have an open area, common space, similar to a food court kind of thing where people will be able to sit and eat. It will not be a sit down, full service restaurant, simply because of parking. And most of this will be done during the day because of the requirement, because we do have residents upstairs and the developers do not want us to have anything in that facility that will negate and have a negative impact of the residents up and above. And so we're hoping that during the day, residents go and come through work, and then the business center and the incubator and the food service part will be operating during normal business hours.
Yes, Councilmember Saccharin, I just want to assure you, we will have a conversation with zoning about patron use area and parking, and this will not be a late night space. So we're going to try to make this as easy to permit and get through as we can.
Okay, all righty. In that area, I'll be working with Mr. Benjamin and T&T so far as the parking is concerned, because we had some problems there, and I'm working on with him now, but we'll work on it some more in that area to see what we as a city can do to contain that particular area, because we had that area contained before, but now we have people just from the other buildings parking in that area, taking it over, and so we're going to be working on that.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but
okay, before I take the motion, go.
Something for our next meeting. And it's also growing out of the Equity, Inclusion, and Racial Conciliation Commission. And that is to they support, and that the mayor's already aware of this, for the city to establish a fair housing law that is substantially equivalent to the federal law. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the mayor wants that to come before this committee, before it goes to the committee of a whole, so that we all can have an opportunity to sort of review it and comment accordingly. But it's already been drafted by our legal department. And I think it's ready to come to us for a review.
Okay.
And perhaps at our next meeting or the following CD meeting, which is probably better because it's not a small document, guys,
Okay.
to review.
Yeah.
So I just wanted everybody to know that that is coming for this committee to review and make recommendations to the committee of the whole.
Okay, if it's a large document, we have a meeting on the 25th, so we'll probably bring it back to April.
I think so.
That's correct, Councilmember Mitchell. We would wait until April for that one.
Okay, that's fine.
And Councilwoman Jackson hand is up.
Okay,
Councilmember
I'm
Mitchell.
getting ready to carry the question. Councilwoman Jackson, but we still have a motion on the floor. Councilwoman Jackson.
You're muted.
You're
Oh, I'm
muted.
sorry. I said I apologize. I thought we'd already voted, so I have another topic to bring up under old business. So
So let me carry the motion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 Aye. Have it. Yes, Ms. Jackson.
Okay, thank you. So going back to old business, I feel like a couple of CD meetings a while back, we began to look at the East River Bridge TIF list. And at that time, the mayor and Ms. Wharton educated us that there were still, several $100,000, not millions by any stretch, but as I recall, like 550,000 or in the ballpark there, out of the existing TIF that is not designated for anything. And we talked a little bit about how that could potentially be awarded, or however we would do it, to the low line venture getting off the ground, in terms of knowing that they've got a lot of engineering costs they need to start working on if we're going to get serious about helping them put a shovel in the ground by the end of the year, as they've been promising their investors and their supporters. So I was hoping maybe I could make a motion to, I think the mayor said at the time that we can't have the low line couldn't have the whole 500 and some thousand, but I'd like to make a motion that we authorize or ask the mayor and the finance office to establish an MOU or an extension of our MOU, or whatever legally we have to do in order to transfer $350,000 out of those existing remaining undesignated funds from the current TIF, the current bond, and make sure that it's dedicated exactly to what we all know are those first engineering functions that they need to undertake. I recall a survey, and I don't know what else, but that's my motion.
The Councilwoman Jackson, we were going to, this was coming up in the big council, coming up with that, pertaining to that at council. But even that, looking at that, I'm gonna carry, call for the motion, but looking at that, we also have the smokestack that we still have to deal with 780, whatever the figure it is. So that's what they were looking at too, to see if we're gonna have all that money, because we still have to come with that money for the interior of the smokestack. And that's a big portion of money coming from the TIF. You see, so I don't know if we're gonna have that money, the $300,000 or whatever the case may be. And just throwing it out there, I don't know if the mayor would have anything to say about that, but I'll carry the motion. Your motion, if you get a second on it, but I'll carry the motion. But I think everybody is waiting, because we know we have a lot of money that we have to add to that and other projects that we have before we can make a motion and throw things in until we know exactly what's there.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, it was moved in second.
Could somebody repeat the motion for me, please?
Yes, good. Well, Ms. Jackson wants to.
Yes, that the CD committee recommend use of the undesignated portion of the current East River Bridge TIF, redevelopment area TIF, to be awarded to the Friends of the Low Line or whoever we would hire as part of an agreement to begin the engineering work so that they can get started with, I know it's a survey, I'm not sure what the other engineering work needs to be.
Well, I'm on, the motion is there. I carry the motion. All in favor, vote by saying.
No, I got a question.
Yeah, Councilman Waring, because I was going to carry the motion, but I can't support this right now, but I carry the motion.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. Even in making the motion, we don't even know the exacts of what
That's what I'm right.
Be put on. We can't spend taxpayers' dollars like that. I am for the low line, but we got to have transparency and accountability. That's why I asked the question. It sounds like the agreement is being worked out, and I don't think we're there yet. But when we're there, then we can ask those specific kind of questions. If the low line belongs to the city, our capital projects department should be having those bids on engineering services. Okay, they actually need to be sending the bids out for that. How do we know that the bids are competitive? Matter of fact, how do we know that the prices are competitive? We hadn't even seen any bids. Our people who are trained to do that hadn't seen those bids. I just want to be able to get the work done at a competitive means above board so everybody can have a clear, fluid understanding on it. When these dollars flow from the taxpayers in conjunction with the Friends of the Low Line, those bids are being brought in on a competitive basis and hopefully overseen by a capital projects department by the city. We've got the experience to do something like that. So now we're going to make a motion to spend money, and we don't even know the exacts of what the money's going to be used for, and we don't know whether the objective of the smokestacks are going to be fulfilled or not. Just too many unknowns. So I'll be voting against it.
I will amend my motion to create a budget that comes from the TIF that works within the agreement for the city to control the use of those funds for the purpose of getting the low line started on the engineering aspect of the work they need to do in the next regular order.
Mr. Chairman, why don't we wait until we get the agreement that they're working on?
Let me go to Mr. Mayor first and then we'll.
Okay.
So I was going to kind of say the same thing. I mean, if you want to add subject to an acceptable memorandum of understanding between the two of us, and you know, we've been talking about this for a long time, so I hate to use the expression, maybe the cart's a little before the horse. I mean, we're almost there. He's going to send the agreement tomorrow or next week, and I don't know how long it'll take Chip and them to figure it out. But those are exactly the kinds of things Councilmember Waring is mentioning that should be outlined in this agreement. And I'm all for empowering the Friends of the Low Line to do a good bit of this design, engineering, and construction, as long as we're comfortable, you know, that they're following our practices and we have authority of decision making and all those kinds of things. And I know they don't object to all that kind of thing, but I think we do need that in place, and that's, Tom says he's got it coming to us soon. Now, just as a practical matter, I do agree with that outstanding question mark about what might be needed in addition for the first part of the smokestacks, that we should use this balance of the first bond in order to get the design and engineering going. So I'm totally in agreement with that. And then when we issue the bigger bond later this year, we'll talk about how that gets prioritized, and so much for flooding and so much for housing and so much for parks, you know. But I think we're almost there. respectfully, Councilmember Jackson, and I would ask that we let this agreement come on to Chip and make a more definitive motion on this at the next meeting or when we bring it to council.
So,
that-
sir, you're talking about the next meeting being the 25th?
I don't know how long it'll take Chip to get through that complicated thing. Whenever we're ready to approve the MOU, it ought to say in it that here's the budget for design and engineering is 350,000 and we'll agree where it comes from. I don't see why we don't go ahead and specify that personally. We're at that point where we should be specifying that. And I think we're all.
I'll withdraw my motion until the 25th, and at that point, we'll make it subject to the memo of understanding that's been delivered to the city and hopefully very close to being drafted for the city council.
I appreciate that. And I hope Tom doesn't get any heartburn about that, but I think that's where we are. It's your meeting, Mr. Chairman. I see Councilmember Appel has his hand up.
Mr. Appel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I almost made it an entire meeting without saying a word. It would have been a record. Would have been a record, but I couldn't help myself. Listen, I think a lot of great points have been made on this issue. I think that it's important that we send a clear signal of support and we get this low line moving. But at the same time, I can't argue with Councilman Waring's logic. We need to have it buttoned up. We need to do it in the right way. It's taxpayer money. We need to do it the right way. I would only say that, I know Andy and Chip very well. They're both outstanding lawyers. If for whatever reason, this very complicated, comprehensive document is somehow not ready for prime time, March 25th, maybe we might be able to explore a more, maybe a skinnier document specifically related to maybe this first use of funds for some of the design and engineering work. In other words, we could take a bite-sized approach in the interest of time and the interest of moving things forward. Now, hopefully the agreement gets all worked out. We can do the whole thing at once. I think that'd be ideal. But I think that this is a grand project. This is a grand effort. It's a catalyst for the TIF. It's a big deal, and we need to show that commitment to this effort. And weather's getting warm, spring's here. This would be a wonderful time to get this exciting project moving forward.
So if I could add one more thought then, Mr. Chair, on that, to follow up on Councilmember Appel. If Chip gets this thing next week and says, oh my goodness, this is going to take us a while, we could do an amendment to the existing agreement that we have with them just to cover this one piece to get it going. Does that sound like a good kind of compromise or idea?
Perfect.
Yeah, getting it going was my point. I understand that there are, very interested outside parties who want to help do the low line. They want to help fund it. They want to, be partners with the city. I'm not trying to take control and transparency away from the city. Right. I totally agree that, we don't want to have any shades of gray on this issue, but I do feel like this is a small amount of money in the big scheme, and we need to give at least that kind of tangible support so that people can understand who are watching this project, hoping that they can be players and participants and wanting the city to make some little toe in the water move. So that was my point. I'm happy to wait and I'm happy to support whatever comes forward on the 25th.
Myself, Mr. Mayor, I didn't have a problem with the low line. I support the low line wholeheartedly, but even with the East Side TIF, the East Side TIF is for the East Side, which was really started during that time. And when this smokestack came up, and my dilemma on the smokestack, and we talked about $1.5 million that we have to come up with that we have to put into the smokestack. And so when that money is coming from the TIF also. So it's not going to be with so much money left in the TIF that we can spread around. So that's what I'm saying, because I don't want to go back to my district when they said, okay, we support this east side tip for this district and the thing is not, it's not being used where it's supposed to be, then I'm going to be in a world of trouble. And the city going to be in a world of trouble because they're going to be coming, fighting back and beating up everyone there. So I'm trying to keep this thing in a proper perspective. That's all I'm doing, since the east side tip was coming, because the east side tip was started only for housing when we first voted in. And then we added storm water to it, the drainage. We added that to the tip because that wasn't a part of the tip in the beginning. So now we are going further and doing something else. And I know the low line is going to be a beautiful project. It's going to be a project that's going to help us with funds. But I just want to make sure that these things are in place, that we're going to have the money to do these things that we are planning to do that's already in the making. That's all.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I do want to respectfully remind you, we call it the Cooper River Bridge redevelopment area. And this is where the Cooper River bridges used to be.
Right.
It does go over to the east side to pick up the cigar factory and that new development down on East Bay. But that was intentionally to pick up those commercial developments. So it's, anyway, let's be consistent in what we call it.
Right.
Cooper River Bridge.
Cooper River Bridge tip. Okay. Well, if all minds are clear, you have anything else to bring before this committee before we
move for adjournment?
No, sir. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So we adjourn.
All right.